Seret Yemei Tshuva, Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, Simchas Torah, starting a whole new cycle, but we're actually in a cycle already because we began Rosh Chodesh Elul. There's a 40-day cycle between Rosh Chodesh Elul and Yom Kippur. But there's another cycle that we finished this Shabbos. That this is an introduction to a song. Is for the last 7 weeks, we have been reading 7 haftarahs of consolation. This takes us all the way back to the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av. The Shabbos after Tisha B'Av is usually called Shabbat Nachamu, name for the haftarah. From all 7 of the haftarahs are from Yeshayahu, Isaiah, and they're all of consolation. And we began, it's actually a 7-week cycle of consolation. So I was just thinking that as we're about to end the year and begin another year, that we should really go back to the first consolation, which is a double consolation, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. And it seems wherever anyone is who's watching, this has been a very challenging 6 months for many, many, many people. Health-wise, parnasa-wise, socially, spiritually. Has not been an easy time. So I thought we'd start out, in a sense, reminding Hashem that we need more consolation. Even though we're ending the 7 haftarahs, we really could use some more consolation. So if any of you know this song, you're muted, but there's no reason you can't sing along. This is one of Rav Ginzburg's Nigunim, and it was recorded by Shlomo Katz. And very, very quickly, the history is, it's got to be, give me a second. It's like almost 30 years ago. It's hard to believe. 30 years ago, I arranged a series of Fabrengens with Reb Shlomo and Rav Ginzburg. And the first Fabrengen was at the Moshav, and Rav Ginzburg composed this song on the way to the Moshav, because it was that time of year. It was after Tisha B'Av, and it was getting towards Elul. And he composed a song in the car on the way to this Fabrengen. It was in the mid-'80s. Nachamu, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Nachamu Ami, Yomar Elokeichem, Nachamu, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Nachamu Ami, Yomar Elokeichem, Dabru, Dabru, Alei Yerushalayim, Dabru, Dabru, Alei Yerushalayim. Just for those who don't know, the words are, console, console my people, says God, speak to the heart of Yerushalayim. Those are the words of the song, and it continues to let them know that their misdeeds have been forgiven. Nachamu, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Nachamu Ami, Yomar Elokeichem, Nachamu, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, Nachamu Ami, Yomar Elokeichem, Dabru, Dabru, Alev Yerushalayim, Dabru, Dabru, Alev Yerushalayim. Didi dai 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 dai. Ay dai dai. Didi dai 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 didi dai dai. Ay dai didi dai dai dai. Ay dai. Ay dai. I die, 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 die. He die, die. I die. I die, die, die. I die, die, die. Okay, so this is called a Verbringen, which means that we're going to do some learning. We're going to do some singing. And of course, you can't have a proper Verbringen without a l'chaim. So I'm going to make a l'chaim now, and then I'm going to give over a Torah about the word chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shakol niyeh bidvaro. Chaim, Chaim. If you can see it, it was black. It's a black Russian. All of my grandparents were from Russia, Poland. So this is called a black Russian. Okay, all of the Torahs I'm going to give over tonight are relatively short. I'm not giving over like one long Torah. I'll give over a number of shorter Torahs, and in between we'll have some singing. So last week, well, it's just on Shabbos, Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Hashem Elokechem. You are standing, all of you, before Hashem your God. And the Midrash says, what's the emphasis that you're standing before Hashem? So one of the explanations is that the Shabbos before that, we read, V'haya ki tavo el haaretz, and it will be when you come into the land. And in that parsha, there are many, many blessings, but there are many, many what we'll call curses. And in fact, we're told there are 98 curses in the parsha ki tavo. It's very difficult to read them because it's just a horrible description of what could happen if we don't listen and fulfill the Torah. And unfortunately, anyone who read the 98 curses know that they happened. They all happened exactly as predicted, prophesied. So it actually told that when you make a l'chaim, the gematria of l'chaim is 98. Exactly the amount of curses in the parsha. So the Midrash says that's why it says that you are standing, all of you, because when the people heard the curses, they were like, of course we're going to try to keep the Torah, but how could any people stand with these kinds of predictions? So the Midrash says, God says, even chas v'shalom, if all of this happens, there's still the covenant. I will never break the covenant, and you will always be standing before me. So anyways, one of the kavanas of saying l'chaim is that our hope and belief and trust in the goodness of life, the goodness of Hashem, will overcome any lackings that we have, any, as it were, curses that might come our way. So I'll say again, l'chaim. It's a new year, and we want to nullify any curse from this past year on a personal level, a national level, a universal level. And we want to pave the way for new life. L'chaim, l'chaim. So the word chaim without the lamed, l'chaim, chaim is gematria 68. Now Rosh Hashanah is all about praying for life, for affirming life, for being joyful in life. And in the Amidah, every Amidah that we're going to pray during the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right at the beginning, there's 4 mentions of life. This emphasizes how much this word is part of our prayers and our consciousness. Zachreinu l'chaim, melech chafetz b'chaim, v'katvenu b'sefer ha'chaim, l'mancha Elokim chaim. Zachreinu l'chaim, remember us for life. Melech chafetz b'chaim, a God who desires life. V'katvenu b'sefer ha'chaim, and write us, inscribe us in the book of life. L'mancha Elokim chaim, for your sake, the God of life. And we say this every Amidah for 10 days. Chaim, 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 chaim. So interestingly enough, the same gematria for chaim is a word of, represents exactly the opposite. A dead person, the body is called a halal. It's a corpse. A corpse is called a halal. Has the same gematria as chaim. Now this happens a lot. We don't have time to go into this, where you'll have opposite ideas that will be represented by the same gematria. This is one case. That life is balanced by the opposite of life. But this word halal has another meaning. A halal also means an empty space. So when a person passes away and their soul leaves their body, so their body, in a sense, becomes empty of the soul, empty of life. That's why it's called a halal. So in the teachings of the Arizal, so when God decides to create the world, so the Arieh explains in great depth that in a sense, there was no place for a finite world, because all there was the infinite light and energy and presence of God. There was, as it were, no place to put something other than God. So the Arieh explains, this is the secret of what's called Tzimtzum, that God contracted his infinite being. And again, this is all very symbolic. It's all true, but we can only express it in symbolic terms. So we'll call it the middle, is a vacuum, an empty space. And into this empty space, one ray of light called a kav, which is God's infinite light, re-enters the empty space, which is now the place of finite worlds. And from that comes all of creation. without going into it, but it's very similar, different terms, but very similar to the idea of the Big Bang. The same kind of concept that instead of one point exploding and all of creation comes from this, it's the same thing. It's a point that becomes a line and goes right into the middle of the empty space. So what does this have to do with the upcoming holidays? So we're going to see in a minute, we're going to talk about the secret of the letter Resh. But this idea of the middle point. So amazingly enough, when we get to Sukkot and we take the Arba meaning, the most important in a sense, because that's the one we make a blessing on, Al Natilat Lulav. Lulav is Gematria 68. And it is, the shape of it is like a line. So this is a very, very deep idea that when we're shaking lulav, and we have this long lulav, in a sense, we shake out, and it's as if we are giving birth, just like when the ray of light comes into the vacuum, this represents, as it were, the birth of the worlds. So when we're shaking lulav out, it's as if we are taking all of the prayers of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and we're trying now to actually give birth to a new year, give birth to a new us. And then when we bring it into our heart, it's like bringing this ray into our middle, into the pneumius of our lev, the most inner point of the heart. So this is just a beautiful kavana that connects Rosh Hashanah through Sukkot, this idea of Chaim. And of course the lulav represents, that's the famous song in Chabad, Didan Notzach. But Didan Notzach, we will be victorious. But we're told in the Midrash, the Gemara, that the lulav represents like victory. We made it through Rosh Hashanah, we're still here. We made it through Yom Kippur. We believe in life. We believe we will be victorious. Our prayers and our desires for a new year, we will succeed. And this is the idea that the lulav becomes the representation of life itself. Again, lulav equals 68, which equals life. Chaim, which equals 68. So this is just a very, very beautiful kavana. And I'll take this opportunity to bless everyone with a year of Chaim Tovim, good life. It should be good for us. We should all have life, but not just life. It should be good. Chaim Tovim should be good life. Okay, so now I'll sing another nigun, and then we'll go on to another idea. So actually, for those who were part of the pre-Elul, or there was actually Elul already, Elul Verbringen, I sang this song. It's one of Rabbi Ginzburg's songs. I just love the nigun, but the words are so important all the time. But I feel especially now that after what the world has gone through, and it's not over. It's not over. We have no idea how this is going to play itself out. But the words are, Ata takum tirachem Sion. God, please get up and have compassion on Sion. Ki eit lechenena ki ba moed, because the time has come to show graciousness. The time is now. Ki ba moed. And then it continues, Ki ratzu avadecha avaneha, because your servants want and desire the stones of Eretz Yisrael. Because remember, we're asking God to get up and have compassion on Sion. And so we're saying, we love Eretz Yisrael so much. Ki ratzu avadecha avaneha, ve'et afara yechonenu, and even its dust finds grace in our eyes. So this is our love for Eretz Yisrael. And the main message, though, is we are asking God, please, please, bring redemption. The world is in such great need for redemption. Excuse me 1 minute. Atata kum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. I'm getting to nigunim mixed up. Do it again. Atata kum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Ki ratzu avde. No, I'm sorry. I have like 3 different nigunim going on in my head at once. So what? Rav Ginzburg, please forgive me, but the one that's in the back of my mind is Rav Shlomo's Atatakom. Atavakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Atavakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Atatakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Ki ba moed, ki ba moed, ki ba moed, ki ba moed. Atakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Atatakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Atatakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Ki ba moed, ki ba moed, ki ba moed. Well, the truth is, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it doesn't help. I mean, I got to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning after slichot and was up early. So you'll bear with me here. Atatakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Atatakum tirachem Sion, ki eit lechanena ki ba moed. Ki ratzu avdecha et avaneha, ve'et afara yechonenu. Ki ratzu avdecha et avaneha, ve'et afara Yechanenu Ata takum terachem Zion Ki elechenena ki bamoed Ata takum terachem Zion Ki elechenena ki bamoed Ki ratu avdecha et aboneha ve'et afaram yechanenu ki ratu avdecha et aboneha ve'et afaram yechanenu. That was more or less Rav Ginzburg's. I didn't get every note there, but more or less. Both of them beautiful nigunim, and Bezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will listen to our prayers to make this the time. Okay, now we're moving on to the next Torah. A very, very interesting idea. I learned this from Rav Ginzburg, and we'll try to develop it. But we call Rosh Hashanah, of course, Rosh Hashanah, but not everyone knows that the word Rosh Hashanah never appears in the Torah. It's called Yom Teruah, a day of shofar blasts. The name Rosh Hashanah was developed by the Chazal, by the sages, because it is the beginning of the year, the Rosh, the head of the year. But the word Rosh is the same root as the letter Resh. So by understanding the letter Resh, we get a deep understanding of Rosh Hashanah. And before I forget, I should mention, this is very, very important. I'm speaking, of course, from Eretz Yisrael, and I'm looking at who's watching, and I see a lot of people are from Eretz Yisrael. I see a lot of people are also from Chutz La'aretz. So here in Eretz Yisrael, we are beginning today, right now, the 25th of Elul, which is the first day of creation. Right now, as we speak, we're in the energy of the beginning of creation, because Rosh Hashanah is actually the 6th day of creation. Those who are in Chutz La'aretz, it's still the 24th of Elul, but you should be aware that very, very special energy on Chaf Hei Elul this is really the beginning of creation. So back to the letter Resh. There's something extremely unique about the letter Resh, is there's an aspect of beginning, middle, and end to this one letter. There's no other letter that is quite like this, that there is very, very strong connections to the idea of beginning, to end, and to middle. The beginning is the obvious one. Like we said, Rosh Hashanah, Rosh is the same root as Resh, and it means head, Rosh, head, Resh. So this is the beginning of the year. That's the energy we're gearing up. We're gearing up for everything new, a new year. But along with it being the beginning of a year, the old year is ending. So it's the beginning and it's the end. But there's no real clear demarcation. One flows into the other. In fact, the whole judgment of Rosh Hashanah and the 10 days of Tshuva are based on the past year. An accounting is made. The books are open. It's all very symbolic, but the books are open. And all of our thoughts, speech, and deeds of the last year are judged, are weighed. So even though it's a new year, the judgment is based on the past year. So the letter Resh, it's not the last letter, but it comes at the end of the Aleph Bet. So just like Resh means Rosh, a beginning, it's also connected to the end. And it says in Sefer Yetzirah, Na'ud sofan b'techilatan b'techilatan b'sofan. The end is wedged in the beginning, and the beginning in the end. In other words, it's one flow. It's one flow. So the Resh, it's at the end of the Aleph Bet, but its meaning is beginning. But then we have the middle. How is the middle connected to the Resh? So in Gematria, normative Gematria from Aleph to Taf is from 1 to 400. Taf is the last letter, and it equals 400. The Resh, even though it's towards the end, but its Gematria is 200. So in between 1 and 400, the Resh is actually in the middle, 200. So here you have the beginning, the end, and the middle. So at a very practical level, we're ending a year. We're trying to make closure, trying to tie up the loose ends. At the same time, we're trying to prepare for a new year. But as everyone knows, we're in the middle of life. It's not like Rosh Hashanah comes and in a blink of the eye, everything is new. No, we're in the middle of relationships. We're in the middle of a job. We're in the middle of goals. We're in the middle of life. So really, Rosh Hashanah is a combination of really past, present, we could say the middle is present, and future. We're beginning, end, and middle, but it's actually the opposite. The end is the past, the middle is the present, and the beginning is the beginning of the future. So that is actually one of the great secrets of listening to the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. For those of you who have the art scroll machzor, and it's in many, many different machzorim, but Rabbi Sadia Gaon from 1,000 years ago wrote 10 different ideas to be thinking about when hearing the shofar. And the amazing thing is, it's a combination. The sound of the shofar has, in a sense, two opposite meanings. In one sense, it's a sound of joy, coronating the king, of the great shofar blast that we're waiting for Mashiach. On the other hand, we know that the shofar represents crying and destruction and calamity. And we have both. We have both. And so if you look at these 10 ideas, they span really from the beginning to the end. The end being Mashiach. It's not the end, it's actually the beginning. It's the real beginning. But it goes all the way back, Har Sinai. There was the sound of the shofar. And the prophets used the shofar as a warning to the people that how could you hear the sound of the shofar and not tremble? So I'm just pointing out that when we hear the shofar, it's like a sound that connects all of Jewish history, all of history, from the beginning to that's what we read on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. The whole symbolism of the shofar is when God stops Avraham from offering Yitzchak. So instead, he offered a ram that was caught in the thicket by what? Its shofar, its horn. That's the deep connection of the horn, the shofar, with Rosh Hashanah. As of course, this goes back to the first Jew, Avraham Avinu. And the sound of the shofar goes with us through Sinai all the way to Mashiach. So this is the idea of the Rosh, the Resh. The Resh takes us from the beginning all the way to the end. So when we hear the shofar, it's what we call an eternal moment. It's an infinite moment. And on one hand, we want to have all of these kavanot, all of these ideas to be thinking about. And it is very good to prepare before and to know what the sounds of the shofar represent and to be able to connect our heart and soul and mind to those sounds. But at the same time, there's a place to just open up and let the shofar blow through us. In other words, not try to control what the shofar means, but be more receptive. And it's both. It's very, very paradoxical in a way, that we don't want to be thoughtless during the shofar, and then it's like, it's over. It's like, whoa, what happened? I wasn't thinking anything. What just happened? But at the same time, we want to be extremely receptive to hear what the shofar means, coming from above. So I bless all of us to give space for both of that, to, in a sense, be, kavana comes from the word to direct, that we should direct our thoughts, and at the same time leave space to just be totally receptive, to let the shofar, like as it were, cleanse us, blow through us. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Okay, so we're now going to sing another nigun. And this nigun, for those of you who are familiar with what is called Carlebach davening, so this nigun has been adopted, Reb Shlomo adopted it, to Shachrit, right before Baruch Hu. And I'm going to sing the words, and for those of you who have davened in a Carlebach minyan, you'll recognize the words. I'm not going to translate all of them, but it's right after Nishmat Kol Chai, right before Baruch Hu. But the reason I'm singing this is because originally he made up this nigun to a part of Musaf on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And that I want to read the words. That, for those who know, in Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, there's 3 additional sections, and they're called Malchiot, Zichronot, and Shofrot. And each section, Malchiot is kingship, Zichronot is remembrances, and Shofrot are shofar sounds. And each section is made up of 10 verses that mention either kingship, remembrance, more than verses, sometimes a whole passage, and then the sound of the shofar. So in the section of kingship, it's after the 10 verses before we say a blessing. We say a blessing, 3 blessings on these 3 sections. Reb Shlomo, this nigun comes to the words, which I will sing. So I'm just going to sing for those who know this kind of davening. So it's to Shochen Ad on Shabbat. And again, I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but the important thing is that this nigun really comes from Rosh Hashanah. It comes from Musaf Rosh Hashanah. Shochen Ad Maharam v'kahadol shemo v'katuv v'rananu tzadikim b'Hashem v'yesharim lahavat tehilam v'fi yesharim titroman uv'siftei tzadikim titbarach ובלשון החסידים תתקדש, ובקרב קדושים תתעלה, ובמקלות רבבות עמך בין ישראל ברינם, יתפאר שמך מלכנו בכל אבל דור ודור, שכן בכל היצורים לפניך, Hashem Elokeinu, Elokei Avotenu. And then it continues a little bit more. But now I'm going to take the same nigun to, in a sense, the original from Rosh Hashanah. And here, like I said, this is after we've gone through 10 verses or passages about kingship. And that is one of the main themes of Rosh Hashanah, is coronating God as king. Accepting upon ourselves Ol Malchut Shamayim, the yoke of the kingship of heaven, and to be celebrating that we are servants of the king. We are part of God's kingdom. So this passage it says like this, Meloch akala olam kulo bikvodecha. This is a prayer to Hashem that says, please rule over the entire world with your glory. In other words, reveal your glory to the whole world. And if you look at the words throughout Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, these are the most universal prayers of the year, where we are praying that God reveals himself to the whole world, that Mashiach comes for the whole world. V'hinaseh al kol ha'oretz b'yikarecha, and that God will be exalted over the whole earth in his splendor. V'hofa hadar gaon uzecha, and that God reveals his strength and his beauty. I'll call Yoshvei Tevel Artsecha, on all of the inhabitants of the world. And you can't get more universal than that. It is our prayer that one day all of mankind will come together in peace and harmony, and will serve God together. This is our daily prayer. We say it pretty much in Aleinu every day, but it's even more emphasized on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Kulo bikvodecha, ay v'hinaseh al kol ha'oretz b'korecha, v'hofa b'hadar gaon uzecha, al kol yoshvei tevel artzecha, v'yehida kol pa'ul ki ata be'alto, v'yavin kol yitzur ki ata yitzarto, v'hayomar kol asher neshama mi'ah bo Hashem Elokei Yisrael melech u'malchuto B'chomaval mashallah. Adonai, 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 Adonai. I nine I nine I nine. Okay, now a short Torah. It really comes from a story, but it's so important. Such an important story. I heard this from Rav Ginzburg's lips, that one time the Alter Rebbe was at a wedding with Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev. They were actually very, very close with each other, two of the greatest rabbis we can imagine, rabbis. And at the wedding, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak points to one of his students, and he says to the Alter Rebbe with pride in his student, he says, "You see that student? He already is on the level that Eliyahu Navi comes to him." Like, is this a student? But he's already on the level that he's visited by Eliyahu Navi. So the Alter Rebbe points to one of his students. And he says, "You see that student? He's on the level that he has connected to the Yechidah of his neshama. He's connected to the highest level of his neshama." For those who know, according to Chassidut, there are 5 different levels of the soul. The nefesh is what we'll call the animal soul. The ruach is the emotional component of a human being. The neshama is the intellectual. The chaya is the bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious, subconscious, and more important, supraconscious, and especially will, ratzon. And then the highest level is called the yechidah, the unique spark of godliness within the soul. Because as the Alter Rebbe taught us, that the soul is a chelak elokah mima'al mamash, an actual part of God above mamash, like for real. And so Rav Ginzburg said, what we learned from this, and this applies to every single one of us, that wouldn't it be nice if Eliyahu Navi would come to us? Wouldn't it be great? But even more important is to connect to the highest, most inner point of your own neshama. So if we go back, we've had 2 Torahs now about the middle. The first one we learned was about the word l'chaim, that the lulav goes into the halal. All of them have gematria 68. For those who are here from the beginning, I can't go back over the whole thing. But the gematria of chaim is the same thing as the halal, the empty space that God makes for finite worlds. And the lulav is like the point and line of creative energy that comes in and creates all worlds. But that point, that line goes to the middle point. So on Rosh Hashanah, and then we have with the Reish. We have with the Reish also, it's the beginning, the end, but it's the middle. And so in a deep way on Rosh Hashanah, if we get down to the lowest common denominator, we want to just get to the middle, to the panemius of our mind, our soul, our heart, and to connect to Hashem. The Netivat Shalom on the verse, Va'ani tefilati l'cha Hashem et ratzon. My prayer, Va'ani tefilati, my prayer to you, Hashem, at a auspicious time. So the Netivat Shalom just kind of changed where the comma in the verses, and he reads it like this. And my prayer, L'cha Hashem, my prayer to you, Hashem, is to be close to you. L'cha Hashem, that's my prayer. I want to be close to you. So this reminds us of what the Alter Rebbe said. At one point, he said, Ribbon Sha'olam, I don't want your reward. I don't want your Gan Eden. I don't want your world to come. I want you. I want you. Atzmut. I want to be connected from my panemius to your, as it were, your panemius. So we should all, on Rosh Hashanah, there's lots of prayers, lots of words, and the davening on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is so exalted. The nigunim, the nusach, the words are just so uplifting. But let's not forget, like, bottom line here. Bottom line is all these words are an attempt to really express one thing. Ribbon Sha'olam, we want to be close to you. Please let us be close to you. Close to you. Please be close to us. And with that, Bezrat Hashem, we get to the essence of what all of these days are about. So we have 6 more minutes because there's another class after this that everyone is welcome to stay tuned to. But I have 6 more minutes, and so I want to give over one more idea. Very important idea. It says in the Gemara, Ein simcha kahatarat sveikot. There's no joy like solving an unsurety, a doubt. Everyone knows that when you have a doubt, it weighs very heavy on you. You don't know if you'll make the meeting in time. You don't know if you'll make the plane in time. You don't know what the new job is going to be like. You don't know what is going to happen today, tomorrow, the next day. We live with doubt, existential doubt, all the time. For some people, it's not such a problem. Other people have a very hard time dealing with doubt. They could actually go into like deep crisis over doubts. And I'm sure all of us at different times have. So the Gemara says there's no joy like getting out of doubt, of solving an unsure situation. So Rav Ginzburg, he reads the same words, but a little different. That the word for solving the doubt, hatarat, also means to give permission. Like right before Rosh Hashanah, we annul our vows. Hatarat nedarim. We cleanse ourselves. We give ourselves permission to get beyond any mistakes that we made, any vows that we made. So Rav Ginzburg reads the verse like this, that there's no joy like giving yourself permission to be joyous even in a state of doubt. Now, what does that mean? It actually changed my life. Because like I said, we live on a day, almost 24/7. We can't control everything. We have doubt, there's doubt about everything. But does that mean we can't be happy at the same time? So why am I saying this now? Because after Rosh Hashanah, or even on Rosh Hashanah, through Yom Kippur, and especially Sukkot. Sukkot is Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy. Does anyone really know which book they were written in? We have no idea. We have no idea really what the judgment for us personally is, for Am Yisrael is, and for the world. Unless you're a prophet. If you're a prophet, perhaps it's revealed. But we really don't know. And we're even told that that's one of the great things about sukkahs. We're sitting in our sukkah, and we really, as some of the symbolism of going outside and in a kind of rickety sukkah, it could rain on us, it could snow, it could wind, and we're joyous. So this is my blessing to everyone, is that this is such an important part of being part of Am Yisrael. Like, our whole history is full. I mean, there was a time in Europe that you absolutely did not know from one day to another when the next pogrom is coming. The next crusades is coming. The next expulsion is coming. We live in existential doubt all the time. And yet, we made it. We made it, and Baruch Hashem for the Baal Shem Tov, who came and said, despite everything, we need to serve God with joy. Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha. So I want to bless everyone. I want to bless everyone with the wisdom to choose b'charta b'chaim, to choose life, even if we don't know what's going to be tomorrow. We have no idea. But right now, it's good, Bezrat Hashem. So bless everyone with a good year, a sweet year, a healthy year, a year of inner peace, of peace in the world. As everyone can see, like, big things are happening. Like, we're living in very, very awesome times. And a little bit crazy times also, but also awesome times. And so we hope this year great, great, wonderful things will happen to all of us. So I'm going to end with, we barely have time, but I'm going to try to pull this off as quickly as possible with we'll do a shortened version of the Krakow Nigun, which starts slow, and then it gets very, very joyous. And so the slow part we can relate to all of the problems we had this year. It's time to let go. Hopefully it's over. And then the happy part of the song is what's waiting us. Chinese Hi,